Growing up in India, education wasn't just encouraged, it was sacred. It was the bridge between where you are and where you could be. It was identity, aspiration, and sometimes pressure, all wrapped up in one word degree. When I walked across the stage at the NYU School of Professional Studies last year, I carried that belief in me. But I also carried something else: gratitude. Gratitude for institutions that don't just hand out credentials but build pathways. So today's conversation feels personal because almost exactly a year after graduating, I get to sit down with the dean of the very school that shaped my recent chapter. Dean Angie Kamath leads one of the most dynamic professional schools in the country, serving over 15,000 students annually across degree and continuing education programs. But before NYU, her career spanned government, nonprofit leadership, and workforce innovation. She now sits at the intersection of education, policy, workforce, equity, and leadership, shaping not just degrees but economic mobility. So today isn't just about titles, it's about access, it's about women in leadership, about the future of work, and about what it really means to design an opportunity. This is Unapologetic Me, and let's get to the talk with Dean Angie Kamath. Dean, I'm so grateful that I got the time on your calendar and we're able to do this.
It is wonderful to see you. I am so thrilled and honored to be a guest on your podcast. Your hosting is fantastic. Unapologetic Me is so perfect for you. And I really do mean this. We miss your presence here at the school. You were such a dynamic force of nature when you were here, but we're thrilled for what you're doing now back at home.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Let's get started. I always believe leadership starts long before the title. You've spoken about growing up in a family deeply focused on reading and learning. What did that environment instill in you?
Sure. So, my family are immigrants from India, from North India, from Delhi and Chandigarh. And, two things. My mom just drilled into my head financial independence, to as wonderful and as healthy and positive as their marriage is. My mom felt like it was really important to be able to kind of have your own independence and to be not reliant on anyone. And so that was really important. And within that is leadership, right? It's about making choices. It's about making trade-offs. It's about being responsible for yourself. And so I think that that is something that, gosh, my mom probably said that to me starting as soon as I could. I mean, literally when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. Be financially independent, Angie. And so that was important. And then for my father, again, for him, as an immigrant kind of to a new country, I think he recognized what are those levers of power, and different places and different people will have different levers, and for him it was in America. Cash is king, as the phrasing goes, and it's like you can be whatever you want to be, and again, sort of be financially independent, and you get to define your future. You get to make all the choices. You get to be in charge, and being in charge of your future is critically important. So when I think back to where it all began, I think this notion of you make your own destiny, you make your own future, you have choices, and enable through education. A path that will give you those choices, give you agency is sort of sometimes the word that we hear these days. But I
Yeah.
think that's probably the most powerful leadership lesson, that we have choices. No one can make us do anything. We've got, a really big brain, all of us, and if we can use it properly, that's what leadership is.
All right. So amazingly answered, as we expected. Tell us, when did workforce development become personal rather than professional for you?
Yeah, I am fairly obsessed with workforce development. And so, I think for me, what sings to my heart is the underdog story. So whether it's in sports or in culture, that person who sort of travels a great distance to kind of make their way and be who they are, that has always been important to me. It's what I love to do and read about in my spare time. I love sport for that reason. And so for me, knowing that I always gravitate towards people, situations, opportunities, workforce development to me has always been about how to take amazing talent that can be recognized, or maybe is a little less recognized, or maybe is like unrecognizable to
Hmm.
employers, whether it's in government or nonprofits or in the private sector, and how to unlock the ability for employers and hiring managers to see talent in all its various forms. I love that. And for me, it is just a complete mix of personal and professional. I get energy out of that. I mean, it's very much a cliche and I don't love it because I think it's hard to achieve in your early career. But this notion of like, do what you love and it doesn't feel like work. For me, the challenge of like, give me a job that an employer wants to fill who tells me he can't or she can't find anyone. And I get great joy out of sort of saying, what about this person? What about this background? Have you thought about this? So I think I just found this profession that gives me a chance every day and kind of in a school environment gives all of our employees chances every day to make those matches in ways that are unexpected and I think often quite beautiful.
Amazing. You've worked across government, nonprofit, higher ed. That's a rare vantage point. At the NYC Department of Small Business Services, you manage programs serving over 120,000 individuals annually. How do you humanize that opportunity at that scale?
It's a really good question. And I actually started out, I don't talk about it a lot, but I started out my career in banking of all things. So I really I've got a perspective from all of it. So a couple things. Working in a large city, New York City, 8.3 million people, and having the privilege of working for city government. Remember my bosses who would simply say, we can't do things in hundreds. It's easy to create systems that serve hundreds. It's really important and difficult, but critical to create systems that work for thousands. And so that, and that's the definition of impact. So on the one hand, impact was like really drilled into me that it has to be at scale. It has to work for many New Yorkers. It doesn't have to work for every New Yorker, but it has to work for many. And so I believe that to be true. But then like, how do you get that down to the person? And so we really had a very neighborhood specific approach to working. And so uh, this is a very international podcast. So just to say, in New York City, we have a really creative community. In Brooklyn, we have in Queens an incredible entrepreneurship and immigrant focused community. In the Bronx, we have a very tech focused community. In Manhattan, we've got a very finance focused community. And so we really sort of tapped into those identities and we created sort of subcultures and kind of not a one size fits all is probably the answer to the question. We sort of said, well, New York is made up a lot of different types of people. And so let's create a place for veterans who worked in the military, who are transitioning out. Let's create a place for young people who want a particular type of job. Let's create a place for creatives who are really excited. Let's create a place for entrepreneurs who want to launch their business or grow their business. Let's create a place for folks who are really excited about healthcare and helping people. Let's create a career center for folks that are deeply interested in transportation and logistics. And so that's how and then we like really tapped into that and we showcased different types of people in those different types of career to say our military focused career center wasn't just for men, it was for women, it was for people of color. Our creative place was about technology as much as it was about art. Our place around kind of transportation logistics, it wasn't just around kind of pilots and truck drivers, it was around kind of customer service and folks who work in airports and concierges and hospitality entities. And so again, it's kind of going after the obvious and the not so obvious and helping create a system where as many New Yorkers as possible could see themselves showing up, going there, getting a job there, talking to someone. And I think that ability to communicate, to kind of visually have ads and kind of marketing, to have a physical presence that is inviting and just speaks to lots of different types of people was how we really tried to humanize things. We got training from some of the best hoteliers in the world to say, how do we take the government feel out of government? So it's an inviting, hospitable place like the world's best hotels. And so we've really thought about that human interaction.
All right, tell us what's the biggest misconception about job training and workforce development?
Oh, I mean, I think about myself, and I've been spending a lot of time with our students. It's that time of year, as you remember, about jobs and where to go. And so I think a common misconception is I have to wait for the perfect job, or I see myself in this job, or if I don't get this job, I'm something less than kind of perfect or I'm a fail. I failed in some way. And so I think we learn something from every job. I think we should always go after, and I'm really passionate. There's a framework that came out of MIT called a good jobs framework. And it's as simple as that. A good job, it's not just compensation. Often when people ask what makes a good job, compensation is quite low. It's there, but you want to be paid fairly. You don't have to be paid, exponentially, but you need to be paid fairly, certainly. But the five other elements of a good job is growth opportunities, a fair and safe workplace, a manager who is able to kind of give you mentoring and coaching and feedback, the ability to kind of see a career ladder where you can expand and
Yeah.
grow. That's what makes a good job. And so it's actually been codified. There are lists of companies globally that fulfill this good jobs framework. And what's interesting about it is, and US News and World Report has done this kind of really interesting kind of ranking system. And it's basically, it's not a list of 1 to 50. It's not a list of here's the best employer. It's depending on you and if you want stability versus more compensation, if you want learning
Mm.
opportunities versus growth opportunities, if you want a great manager, if you want abilities to work in multiple different locations, you pick as a job seeker what's most important to you. And it's different for all of us. You and I would probably have a different way of scaling what's most important to us. And then you put that into the algorithm and it pops out. Here are companies that score well on the things that matter to you most. It's a long way to say a misconception is, and I'm going to pick on one company, but it's out there in success equals working for Google. And I think success
Mm.
equals working for an amazing manager at Google. It might not be like not everything at Google is created equal. Not anything, not any position, any company is created equal. And so I think we can get stuck in that's an awesome brand, and therefore I want to
Yeah.
work there. And that's like, it's just not how the world of work works. But really spending time thinking about what's most important to you and then starting to talk about what are companies that have like a lot of stability and are really focused on growth opportunities? What are companies that pay really well that also kind of focus on international and kind of, mobility in terms of geography? What are companies that have great managers and maybe are stable, maybe are fair paying, but not like exorbitant paying? Who are they? And I feel like I am on a mission to try to help our students and alums really think about their job search in those more broad terms because I think it's fair and it's realistic.
Yeah, and as you were explaining, I was recalling the classroom sessions and I was like, oh my God, this feels like so much more relatable. As I was sitting in the class and we were discussing about job opportunities and companies. And I think this question is going to benefit a lot of students who are currently looking for a job or aspirationally, just to have the right perspective of how to march ahead and what is it that they should have in their mind as they're looking for a job. All right. When you've seen the system from the outside, stepping into an institution like NYU must feel different. My favorite segment to explore and talk about the school. So, when you stepped into leadership at NYU School of Professional Studies, what was your vision initially?
Sure. So I remember when I got the job, and it was before I started. I kind of walked past the school, and I looked up, and I was with my husband. He's like, "This is a big move. Do you have this?" I was like, "I think so." And so just to say, this was a big role for me to step into. And again, just having that humility to say, when I started interviewing for it, I thought I was a good fit, but you never know. And I think the first part is I have always looked for jobs that are a stretch. And when my husband was like, Ange, do you have this? I was like, I think so.
Mm.
Like that's how I love to feel. I love to feel that way, kind of going into a new job. I NYU has a really strong brand. I've always worked in a very mission aligned, kind of public oriented, save for my banking start. I've always worked in organizations like that. And so I wondered if I fit in. I wondered if I was too much of a bleeding heart. I wondered if, my personal passion around fighting for the underdog, I wondered if that would be misplaced here. I wondered if I would find people who had sort of my worldview. And I hoped that I would. I felt like I've met a lot of folks during the interview process, but you know that like on the interview, everyone's on their best
Yeah.
behavior during an interview process, right? And so those were all my wonderings. To get to the vision, I've always been really clear. Again, whether some might call me stubborn or other words to describe me, but like I set a goal and I'm going to hit it. And so during my interview, I didn't know if I was going to get the job, ECTA. I always knew that I was a slightly non-traditional candidate. So I'm like, I'm going to put it all out there. And so I remember in my interview, I said, I had to answer the question, what's your vision for the school? And I said, I think that the world doesn't know about the School of Professional Studies. I think that excellence and experiential education and access are not mutually exclusive. I think that we can really focus on getting people jobs and getting people excellent jobs. I think we can really focus on big partnerships with employers where we become the go-to talent source. And I said, if that's what you want, if that's exciting, hire me. If you're looking for someone who wants to focus on research, if you're looking for someone who wants to focus on some other aspect, you have a different candidate. But like in me, this is what you're going to get. And this is what I've done at every other job. I've set that vision often around storytelling, around like helping um, rule the narrative. And you know this from kind of your work at SPS, like write the narrative or someone else will write it for you. And so that's been
Yeah.
always really important to me. And so that's been my vision to kind of really focus on excellence in curriculum and in teaching, to really tell the story of our successes through what our alumni are doing primarily, as well as what our faculty are doing, to be able to be accessible and accessibility to me is if you are a curious learner, you have a place for yourself at our school. It might be in a degree program, it might be in a 2-week course, it might be an online course, it might be in a single kind of workshop, it might be coming to one of the conferences. But if you are a curious lifelong learner, you have a place for us. It's our job to kind of figure out what that looks like. I don't like schools that brag about 5% acceptance rates. I don't like schools that have clubs that you have to interview for and you end up getting rejected. I am very
Yeah.
much of the point of view that elitism and kind of like that exclusivity masks opportunity. And it kind of is exclusionary versus helpful. And so those are all pieces that I think are really important and that kind of we've worked really hard to institute here. And I think we've largely accomplished a lot of it, but it's never ending in the economy. So long as the economy changes, our work changes, which is why it's pretty fun to be here because the challenges just keep evolving.
Beautiful. All right. NYU SPS serves students at different stages of life. How do you design curriculum for such a diverse learner base? I mean, I was a student, but I want the world to hear it.
Yeah. So, again, like I said, if you're curious, we have a very high expectation. So we will take, um, we have fantastic faculty. And I would say if I had to think about the core of our school, on the degree side, probably 2/3 of our degrees are master's students. So we really have specialized educators, faculty members who are practitioners, who are working in the real world and choosing to teach with us. And they're the core and like beating heart, I would say, of our school. And so they teach in our master's degree programs. Many of them also teach in our undergrad programs. It's the same person, right? It might be an
Yeah.
adapted curriculum that's more complex for a master's student, but it's the same teacher teaching an undergrad version, which might be more of a survey course that's talking through case studies versus a master's course that focuses on capstones and like actually consulting with the business and the C-suite in an organization. You take that same faculty member and sort of say, how would we introduce high schoolers to this? And they would say, here's how we would do it. We would give like one case study, rather than the 10 that undergrads get. We would do 3 site visits. We'd put 4 kind of amazing practitioners in front of the students to talk about their journeys. And so it's always that core of what's most important about this topic or this sector, this industry. And then it's just like diving deep or kind of modulating. It's that same faculty member that will tap to run an executive education program for 15, senior professionals who want to hire us to do kind of an intensive retreat for them, where it's about spending time, it's about listening to what the groups want, it's about giving new and relevant information. I think the notion of data storytelling, I think, has always been really compelling to me. So it's like knowing how to tell stories, which whether you're literally 5 years old or 100, like we as humans connect through storytelling. Data storytelling is an interesting and important part because I think in the working world, you don't want just anecdotes. Don't want the cute stories. You want to hear about data. You want to hear about trends. You want to hear about what has changed. You want to hear about decisions that were made that led to results and why and how. And so that notion of turning change and leadership into
Hmm.
action through stories, through data, through examples, through case studies, that really applies to just about every age group. And so that's how we do it. But our faculty is amazing. And the fact that it's the same faculty that kind of teach at the different levels, it's fun for them. Again, we're probably not everyone's cup of tea, right? For some probably are just,
Yeah.
I want to teach one thing to one set of students. We're really blessed to be here in New York City, where we have just access to so many talented practitioners who thrive on working in different audiences. And again, from a leadership perspective, as a leader, there are about four different generations that are in the workforce right now. You, as a leader, you have to know how to navigate and use language that makes sense, that's understandable, that's compelling, that draws people in from different generations. And so it's kind of similar. So again, when we talk about how real world focused we are, I'd say like we don't treat anything different than a manager out there in the workforce has to deal every day with like different levels of folks, right? I mean, again, I've got
Yeah.
teenagers, so like they call my husband Unc, they call me a boomer, and it's just like kids keep us, my children keep me younger by sort of like giving me a language and a way to access. And I'm always talking to them about like, where are you getting your news? What are you thinking about? What did you hear about that was interesting today? And where we get our news is really different by kind of generation, and being able to be versed in language and storytelling and where we're getting news, what is interesting, what's trending. Like it's super fun. It's a lot of work to figure out how to be relevant. It's a hell of a lot easier to be on one channel and to not modulate, but it's far more interesting to think about leadership and effectiveness with different people. But gosh, it keeps us on our toes. That's for sure.
Perfect. All right. What does career connected education actually mean beyond the brochure?
Yes. Um, Career connected education, it is essentially creating classes that are the equivalent of work experience. Let's put it that way. So, we have lots of companies who come to us and we're like, give us a sticky, unsolvable problem. Give us something that you're really grappling with. Give us kind of an opportunity to kind of have Gen Z and millennial viewpoints inform your decision making. And quite frankly, a lot of leaders, to our point just earlier, a lot of leaders, they don't know what a Gen Z or a millennial customer base needs and wants. But
Hmm.
it's pretty amazing to have talented NYU students give them insight, give them answers, come up with
Yeah.
project proposals. I mean, somewhere in there is IP, and we actually have our partners sign agreements so that the IP remains with us. But that is what career connected learning looks like. The classes that are, the equivalent of a work experience is one way to think about it.
Amazing. So, because I've studied at the school, so I understand AI and emerging technologies, but I want the world to know, how
Okay.
are we integrating AI and emerging technologies into professional education?
Yeah, so we are really lucky. We are one of the kind of highest adopters at all of NYU in terms of AI in the classroom. And it's because of this career connected learning. It's because of our approach that if we are meant to prepare our students to thrive in the real world, we have to share with them what is happening in the real world, which is the adoption, experimentation, and use of AI. I was talking to a
Hmm.
friend recently who is a lawyer. And a lot of law schools are really very much sort of saying, don't use AI because it kills the billable rate. It is
Hmm.
absolutely killing the business model because most people are not going to want to pay a billable rate if they think half of the
Hmm.
work is done through an AI agent, and really half of the work should be done through an AI agent, right? The
Yeah.
research, the culling together, the summarizing, that should be automated. And so, a law school, because law firms don't want to use AI, law schools are saying let's limit the use of AI. What's interesting though is when you talk to in-house lawyers, in-house counsel lawyers who are working for a company, they're not raising revenue, they're costing the company. So they're like, use all the AI you want if you're in-house counsel, because we have to cut costs. We have to make the work more efficient. So just to say, it's very interesting. We are thankfully not a school where we have this conundrum of industry telling us, no, 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 don't use AI. All the industries that we teach in, marketing, I mean, marketing's been using AI, predictive analytics,
Yeah.
big data for years. I mean, I don't have an exact kind of, fact base, but like at least 15 years. I mean, language learning models have been around for a long time. We have
Yeah.
HR degrees. HR has been using kind of big data and kind of language learning and applicant tracking systems for many, many, many years. And so it's our job to integrate, to show and share kind of the tools. There's always going to be a shiny new object. The thing about AI right now is every week, and I'm sure it's the same for you, Acta, every week I'm hearing about a new platform, a new tool, a new this. Part of what we have really done is like we are part of the Gemini platform, and there's a lot of opportunities to kind of experiment and kind of work within that. And so we're just kind of going all in as a school on that. But then within our classrooms, we ask all of our faculty to sort of say, what are the tools that you're using when you work at the MBA? What are the tools that you're using if you're working for a big real estate, Cushman and Wakefield? What are the tools that you're using at Publicis or WPP? And the faculty bring that in and sort of say, this is how we're doing it
Oh,
today.
yeah.
It'll probably be different tomorrow, but it's very much just kind of how we are required to teach, given our mission to help students thrive in the real world. I'm so glad we don't have some of these conflicts that I think a lot of schools legitimately have in terms of how to manage the impacts of AI in particular industries.
Okay, this question is close to my heart. What are you the most proud of in your tenure so far?
Oh, I I'm really proud of, I think, being a dean that listens to students. So, I think there's so much wisdom in the student voice, and again, sort of to that multi-generational. I know what I experienced in college when I liked in college 35 years ago. How in God's
Mhm.
name is that the same thing that students want now? And so I'm most proud, Ekta, of I set up pretty early on a couple of things where it was a student voice that was powering the conversation. So I've got student advisory groups for online students telling me, what are my blind spots? What am I missing? What's working? What's not working? What should I be telling future students? What do I have to correct to make it better for future students? We have a advisory group for undergrads, for grads, because those students all need something different. There's some commonalities, but they really want something quite different. When you're here for 4 years, from age 18 to 21, you want something different than a grad school student who maybe is working part-time or is kind of has work experience. You're just looking for different things. And so I'm really proud. Their mandate is tell me what's going on, give me projects. If something's not going right, like give me the solution, give me projects. I don't care if it costs something. Tell me what I need to fix because I can't know everything as the leader of the organization. So I'm really proud of centering the student voice here as a really big informant to kind of my leadership and my priorities. Similarly, again, there's a lot of wisdom within our student group. And so I love that every
Yeah.
year we have peer mentors who we hire, who are second years, who help kind of buddy up and mentor and are kind of assigned a caseload of incoming students who we think just need a buddy. And it could be a buddy because you're moving from another country. You probably want a buddy if you're kind of coming here for the first time to the US, to New York. There's no kind of deficiency, there's no shame, there's no deficit there. It's just you're making a big transition and we want to make it smoother. If you're transferring in from another college, that's something that we want to smooth the friction. If you're someone who yeah, I mean, if you're first in your family to go to college, maybe you don't have as strong of a network to kind of help you understand what to expect. And so I'm really proud again of being able to compensate students for their wisdom and their time, but being able to center the student's voice to help other students. That feels really important. Sometimes we can forget that. Higher ed, like any other industry, it's a business model. I manage a P&L. I'm managing a really large business. And so you can lose sight of your customers sometimes. I think that that's not unique to any industry. I think sometimes when you're so focused on the bottom line, you really can lose sight. And I'm super proud that I don't think we've done that here.
All right, love the answer. Now, beyond innovation, there's leadership, especially as a woman leading at this level. What has it meant to lead as a woman in spaces historically dominated by policy and institutional hierarchies?
Yeah, so it's so interesting. It's Women's History Month, so I think about this a lot. And I think my answer has changed over time. I've often
Okay.
been Ekta put in I've actually found age to be something that I've had to overcome more than gender, I would say. When I
Okay.
think about it, and again, being an Indian American, like that has put me as in, I'm often in spaces where there's not other people of color. And so that is something that I have. seen and experienced. Has it held me back? I'm not sure. I'm super proud of being an Indian American. I quite frankly think we kind of kick butt in the business world and
Yes.
most industries. So it's like that almost is it's the opposite of a deficit. It's like a real kind of asset. So I haven't
Hmm.
felt issues there. I have not felt as many issues around gender, partly because of just the way I think my parents, just sort of said like, do whatever you want. Like you're smart, get an education, you've got a good brain, like you dream it and you do it. And like there was never a focus on gender. Like I never took a dance class, which was like shocking to so many people. I never dressed in pink. I played tennis because my dad played tennis. I, did certain things. I just did it, like not very gender specific. Partly, I think it was my parents were immigrants. So, like I didn't know about Barbie dolls and they didn't know about like going to ballet class or whatever. They were just sort of like, I don't know, ride your bike, go play tennis, go read a book. So I just didn't grow up thinking a lot about gender. Long way to say, I have felt
Hmm.
ageism. I get all the time still. And again, this is personal. It's probably why I don't dye my hair. I get a lot of like, "Oh, you look lo young for a dean," which to me is
Hmm.
like, what are you actually saying? Do you think I look
Yeah.
underqualified? Are you saying I am youthful? I don't think you're saying that. I think you're saying like how'd you get to where you got? Like, are you legit? How can you be so young looking and be a dean? And so I will say that that is the thing that I hear a couple times a month still less around gender. And so how do I deal with that? But again, we all have something, whether it's person of color, gender, ageism, whatever the world is, whatever the issue is in whatever part of the world, we all have something, right? And for me,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
something is age. And so what I essentially say sometimes in a particular place, I'll recite my resume and I'll just sort of say, well, I did go to Harvard and I do have two Ivy League degrees. So like I've learned something, right? So I'll drop the
Yeah.
Harvard bit if I feel like that's the thing that's going to take away the question of you look young to be a dean. In other places, I'll sort of say, well, I worked for city government for Michael Bloomberg and managed a system that served 125,000 people. I learned a lot in that.
Talk about it. Yeah.
In other contexts, and again, I like to think I'm a pretty humble person, but so like you have to really push me with that
I
comment
get
for
it.
me to kind of whip out the my resume. But
Yeah.
that's often again, what are people looking for? Again, I guess I'm shocking people, maybe I'm surprising people. And so I'll just take that as an invitation to sort of say, well, you don't know me, but let me share kind of some of my backgrounds and experiences. And I talk a lot that working in a university is a lot like working in government. You have a mayor or a president. You've got lots of constituents. You have lots of pushes and pulls. You typically have constrained resources, but you have to serve people. You have to have
Hmm.
very much a servant leadership mentality. And so I think I try to always revert back to the facts. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I think in the face of disbelief or
Yeah.
folks questioning qualifications, which can happen with gender or any number of issues. It is correcting for the facts. And I think it's a charitable assumption to say they're using a lot of assumptions and bias to put me in a bucket and let me educate them on why I shouldn't be in that bucket and why, they're wrong. And it could be a learning moment for both of us. I mean, getting mad or getting offended will get you nowhere. They'll continue to
Yeah.
think you're all sorts of things that are not true. And so you have to use the moment to educate people. And there are moments when I'm intimidated because I'm in a very scholarly group with lots of PhDs and I do extra homework.
Hmm.
There are other rooms when I'm much more comfortable and maybe I'll leave the talking to someone else. There are other rooms that it's about reading the room, I think, as well.
I just love how answers feel so real because you've been explaining everything in such a nice manner and exactly what you feel. Which then brings me to this question: what advice would you give to women who are ambitious but unsure how to navigate power structures?
Yeah, that is a good question. So, um, and I don't want to give a typical answer of like find a mentor, but I will say, um, after probably my second professional job, I was more in the power seat and I was more able to kind of have choices about where I worked and who I wanted to work for. And those first few jobs, like you take what you can get, right? Like you take the job that's hiring you. You don't always get to kind of choose the manager. I'd say, and so know that there's something to learn from everyone. And those first early jobs are just going to be learning opportunities. And you're going to learn like what you like and what you don't like. But then over time, I think, we have power and we should select workplaces. Again, back to that good jobs framework, we should select workplaces that work for us. We shouldn't, and this was hard for me, right? Like my parents had a lot of
Yeah.
expectations for me. They wanted me to work for brand name McKinsey or Goldman. And I just knew those environments weren't for me. And so I
Hmm.
think, places, it's not defeatist, but I do think that we have to put a lot of effort into thinking about the cultures that we want to be a part of. Sometimes there could be a place with a not great culture, but a great manager. So I think if you don't have the luxury of having working for someone or having a job in a place where you love everything about the culture, love everything about your manager, and vice versa. Sometimes you could work in a great place with culture where you have amazing colleagues, an amazing product or vision or purpose, and maybe an okay manager, but like you can't trade off on everything, right? And so I think that would be my advice to women, which is find a great manager or find a great culture that's supportive. But you have to find something that's really going to work for you. And over time, you get to make all the choices, and you'll be able to find the culture and the people that work. But early in your career, you're not. But you have to find something. So whether it's coworkers, it's culture, it's affinity groups, it's a manager. And all I say that because all of those structures give you access to people, give you access to advisors, give you access to places where you can ask the questions. If one person's thinking it, there's no way that other people are not thinking it around them, right? And so being able
Hmm.
to kind of find those places and people that you can talk to about what you're experiencing. If one person's experiencing it, chances are everyone is, and it's worth open airing that and kind of figuring out solutions. And sometimes the workplaces and the construct is just not ever going to change, and you have to make a decision if you're going to stick it out or if you're going to find some place that does. But every job gives us a lot to learn from, and so I'm a big believer. I have worked in places where I didn't think I had very supportive bosses from a gender perspective, bosses that were, I would probably say, sexist. And I learned in those jobs how to communicate more clearly. I learned in those jobs how to be effective. I learned in those jobs how to use data and kind of do whatever. I learned in those jobs going out to happy hour with the boys was not for me. I saw
Okay.
other examples of that. So I think you make choices.
Okay. Perfect. Now, we did say that March is about celebrating women, but leadership is about sustaining impact beyond a month. So, if you had to answer, what skills will matter most over the next decade? What would you say?
Oh, easily without a doubt, communication skills and the ability to listen. That you cannot automate that. Being able to just kind of hear people and see people, understand, listen, take the time to show gratitude and appreciation for people who you work with, without a doubt. I want to be around positive problem-solving people who can show empathy, who can show gratitude, who don't always have to be the smartest person in the room, who are always kind of on some level the smartest people in the room, but who don't have to show it.
Yeah.
That's what you need. I mean, there's no room for arrogance at the pace at which the world is moving. I don't have time for folks who think they're brilliant and want to show it. I don't have time for people who are going to be jerks. I don't have time for people who only think about themselves and aren't thinking about the group or the product, not just themselves and their paycheck. And so that, whether you call it empathy or listening or the ability to show gratitude, the ability to read the room, emotional intelligence, that is not going away anytime soon.
And then, how do we ensure equity doesn't get lost in automation?
Equity in automation. So I think at least it's hard to put time frames around this, but if you ask me today,
Yeah.
in the next 3 to 5 years, I don't think that there's going to be a huge amount of jobs going away. I think jobs will start to change. And I think that from an equity perspective, I think over time, for a longer time horizon, there will be jobs that exist today that don't exist in 10 years. I mean, from an equity perspective, I just often go back to education. And I think education and educators like us have an obligation to really think about how we deliver and what we deliver in terms of education. Not everything should be an expensive degree. There's education, which I think is kind of that equity issue, or at least to me, the bridge to equity of if we're enabling people to gain new skills that will continue to keep them relevant, that's really important. So access to education is probably one of the biggest things that I think is quite important kind of going forward.
Okay, Dean Angie, when you look ahead 10 years, what do you hope your legacy at NYU SPS will be?
Well, we've got some bold plans to I have some bold plans here to really take experiential learning to the next level. And so to, run our campus alumni club, to bring kind of entrepreneurship much more into the classroom, to kind of have signature multi-year partnerships with places like F1, and kind of brand name organizations, luxury organizations, global organizations to be in our classroom, to teach for us, to hire from us, and to kind of really go to us as kind of a go-to talent source. And so my legacy would be, I'm picking this number out of thin air, kind of 100 signature partners who are multi-year committed entities that hire from us, talk about us, and really value our students and our alumni. And there are companies and organizations where our students kind of rise to the top. We instituted an alumni hall of fame last year. We have 25 folks in it, and another legacy. We started that to be able to tell our alumni story. I want that to be full of, C-suite executives in the next 10 years. And it will be. It absolutely will be. But yeah, legacy, it's about kind of the student opportunity and again, going back to being a real solution partner to industry because we live in a complicated world. We live in a world where equity, if we don't focus in on it, and the disparities between those who have and those who have not, is getting wider and wider. And so I think being with industry, having access to education and making education accessible, and then highlighting our alumni is what I hope to have even more solidly in place in 10 years.
All right, we've come towards the last question of this episode. Now, this show is called Unapologetic Me for a reason. So, I'm taking the liberty of asking, what are you the most unapologetic about at this stage in life?
Ooh, all right. So I just turned 50 this past year, and so I
What?
thought a lot about just what's important. And so for me, I'm unapologetic about spending time on myself. Um, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. There's a lot of things pulling on my time, and I am unapologetic about going to yoga for an hour and a half every day just to clear my mind, to focus on me. And sometimes it means I miss dinner. Sometimes it means the family orders in food. Sometimes it means I start my day at 9:30 a.m. instead of 8:30 a.m. But I'm unapologetic about taking that time for myself. It's a relatively new practice. I've just been doing it in the past 7, 8 months, but I feel great. And I haven't taken that type of time religiously every single day for myself in a very long time, and it feels good.
Okay, now tell us, what do you feel about the show? What do you feel about the content? What do you feel about me?
Oh my gosh, I said it from the top. We miss you and your presence. If something about our conversation can help or inspire
Yeah.
one person, it's worth it. And I appreciate we have to talk about these issues, right? We have to talk about
Yes.
how to navigate difficult situations. We have to talk about what it's like to be the first to do something. We have to talk about mistakes that we've made and normalize that. And so I really appreciate that your show is one that kind of doesn't just talk about all the awesome things that are happening, but like talks about like what's been hard, what didn't work out, what is advice, how do you navigate hard conversations. So I think that real talk is really incredibly important, and keep doing it and keep it up. And we're super proud of you.
All
You will
right.
one day
Thank you
be,
so
I
much.
hope, in the Alumni Hall of Fame. I've got no doubt.
Yes, yes, totally aiming for it. Okay, what I love about conversations like this is the reminder that education isn't just about degrees, it's about direction. Dean Angie Kamath's career has been about exactly that, expanding access, designing opportunity, and helping people build futures through learning and work. And as someone who graduated from NYU SPS just last year, this conversation feels incredibly full circle for me. From public service to higher ed leadership, Dean Angie continues to shape how institutions respond to a changing world and how opportunity reaches more people. Dean Angie, thank you so much for having us,
Thank
for
you.
joining us today, and for sharing your insights. And to everyone listening, this is Unapologetic Me, where ambition meets access and leadership means legacy. Until next time, it's me, your host, Ekta Kurana, signing off. Live your life unapologetically.